Welcome to Learning to Trust with Scott and Becky Quinlan. Our desire is to discuss topics such as marriage, infidelity, forgiveness, our relationship with God, and our journey to find our true identities. Today, we take you on a radical journey of trust. This journey took us to 3 states in 4 years. Come along as we share our lessons learned along the way. Thank you for joining us, and here we go.
All right, welcome back to Learning to Trust with Scott and Becky Quinlan. So we just wrapped up part 1 of 2, I guess, of our journey after we were saved. We ended up good stopping point, kind of when we talked a little bit about Florida, but we kind of wrapped it up our journey from the day we were saved until we kind of got to Florida and the trip to get there and all the events that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're going to talk about, I guess, the next 6.5 years since we got to Florida. But
I don't know. There might have to be a part 3.
yeah, we'll try and go quickly.
No, this is good stuff. I mean, I hope you guys are entertained. I don't know if you noticed in the part 1 video, but we got really excited. I think it's just because going over this is just bringing back memories. It's helping to show us just God has been with us this whole time and guiding us. And I don't know. It's just a really cool story. So.
Yeah, and it's so we get to Florida. Our house just sold when we got to Florida. Finally, we got saved from the RV. Wouldn't have been a debacle, but that wasn't what God had in store for us.
And we were learning to trust in that.
He wanted us to grow roots in the church and get fed, and that's what happened here very quickly. And we started to learn how to trust, but we had a lot of fear, and so we were learning a lot of really good lessons early on. So we're now in Florida. I got a job. I think one of the things I kind of remember is we wanted to buy a house. Nothing crazy, just a small 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. But I just remember trying to get credit and stuff, and it was hard. Your dad had to help us out. It's just way different than anything we've been used to, because we always did live by the world, good jobs, all this stuff, and that does, and from the world's perspective, that's what it takes to live in this world. And we're figuring out, like, man, when you don't live as the world lives, things can get harder.
Yes. Well, let's back it up. So we were living with my parents, and I remember, because we had this modeled to us before, you kind of want to be just like a handyman. But in Florida, you have to be licensed, and to do that, it was like a several-year ordeal.
You go work for somebody else. Yeah, right. It was just not an easy path.
And you had quit the IT world, the corporate world, and you were working in a brand new position that was using just your skills in general. Yep. And I remember when we wanted to buy a house, we went to go get a loan, they would not loan us because we had a gap. Even though we had money for the down payment and he had a good steady job, he hadn't been there long enough because he had switched from one career thing to another. So nobody would loan us. And insurance was a thing. That was a whole God thing we didn't talk about, but we were covered under insurance. Yeah. Remember
that's a good story, because when we were getting ready to leave, we quit our job. Right before we quit our jobs, we kind of missed that, I guess. But yeah, I guess a quick rewind back into Kansas City here. Right before we were getting ready to quit my job, we had already planned it out. I got an email from this. I guess we went there to see the guys. We went to a live
he was talking
seminar from the video we watched on the way to Portland.
Yep.
So this guy there was like 6 of us in this little tiny room at this little health clinic. Right. And then they sent out they had another seminar coming up, but it was about
Samaritan
Ministries health insurance for Christians. And we're like, whoa, what's this?
Because that was the one thing we were worried about without either of us being employed, was insurance. Yeah. What happens, healthcare, all that good stuff.
Yep. And so we go to another little teeny tiny seminar, 6 of us in a room. Yeah. And this dude just lays it out. We're like, boom, sold, done. Where do we sign up?
Yeah.
At that time, we had no pre-existing conditions either.
Nothing. So we just stepped right into that and we were covered. It literally was a prayer that got answered
Yep.
like immediately. It was
Yep.
amazing. So
Yeah.
so yeah, all navigating a whole new
And then right
world.
after that, I started having problems with my heart.
Yep.
I got AFib, and we paid $300 over the next probably 4 or 5 days. Have to have a couple ablations done. You know, these multi tens of thousands of dollar procedures, and
Oh, it
we
was
paid.
over 100,000.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
paid
it
three
was
hundred
crazy.
bucks.
Yeah.
So that
So
was totally a
such a
godsend.
blessing.
Perfect timing. Yeah. Yep.
So we were navigating in a whole different realm that we had ever navigated within. And you know what? It was good. It was so good for us to know just a different perspective, right?
Yep.
And so luckily, though, we were able to get some help. And we had been looking at different houses, but
Yep.
Florida Florida is a feast or famine state, and
Yep.
so our meager
Hmm.
I mean, you were getting paid a decent wage, but
Yeah.
you know,
Nothing like
nothing
before.
like
Like less
what
than
we were
half.
way
Way less than
and
half.
so we were looking for a place to live, and I just remember you really felt strongly from the Lord that we should purchase in a certain community, and so
Yeah.
it was inner city St. Petersburg, um, and we went and looked, and just we felt very convicted of this area, and this house came
Yeah.
up for sale,
Yep.
and it was
Remember we were looking at it,
yeah,
and Miss Dorothy.
Miss Dorothy.
Yeah, she was walking, doing her daily walk, and she stopped by and prayed with us. We prayed with her, and she prayed about the house, and
Hmm.
we're like, man, that's pretty crazy. Uh,
You know, I
yeah,
think of her. She is a gentle version of the lady in the war room. Do you remember? I
yeah,
care Miss
yep,
Clara from the war room.
yep,
That Dorothy reminded me of Miss Clara, but very gentle. She never got fired up like that, but man, she
yeah,
could pray.
yep,
And I just remember God. I know that God sent her to say, "Yes, this is where I want you to be."
yep.
And yeah, so we bought that house. And remember when we're moving in, there was a police
Yeah,
officer.
we had this big dresser. I think we had to go buy a bunch of stuff, so we got this used dresser somewhere,
Hmm.
and we had on my truck, I guess. So we were carrying out my truck, and this police officer stopped and helped us carry it in the house. It was pretty cool. And he's like, "Well, make sure you have alarm system, security cameras." Like he just painted his.
No, his first question to us is, "What are you doing here?"
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember? He's like, "What are you doing here?" And we're like, "We're moving in." What kind of question is that?
Yeah.
And you know, it was inner city. It was what, a block and a half off of MLK
One
Drive,
block of MLK. Yeah.
one block off of MLK, and it is an all black neighborhood. So we look different, you
Yeah.
know, and so we didn't care. And so I just remember, what are you guys doing? We're like,
Yeah.
we're moving in.
Yeah. Yeah. Then he fired off a bunch of warning shots at us, and we're like,
But we're
whatever.
like, no, we're not.
Yeah.
No, we didn't put in a security camera. We didn't do any of those
Yeah.
things.
No.
But
No. Beware of dog. No. Nothing. Like we opened up our house.
no, that was a story. I almost did that. Remember
Oh
the
yeah.
dog? Because
Yeah.
there were times. Okay, you have to remember, I grew up in a very white area,
Sheltered rural area.
sheltered, rural. I lived in a high school that did not have any diversity at all. And so when we moved here, I did have I mean, I feel ashamed to say it now, but that's how I grew up. I didn't know anyone different from me.
Yep.
And so moving into this neighborhood, I had to face a lot of differences and fears that I didn't know were there
Yep.
until we moved in. So I'm just going to be completely honest here. And
Yep.
I did not feel like I was racist in any way, but I did not have an understanding of anybody different from me.
You had bias.
I did have bias.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we lived in that neighborhood, though, because I learned so much about cultural differences that one can look at and say, oh, for example, I think it's easier to say an example. Our neighborhood was really loud. People like to yell a lot.
No one would knock on the door. They
well, yeah.
just honked on the road for someone to come out to the car.
And so I always thought people were fighting. And it was not fighting. And so
Yeah.
if we wanted to go to someone's house, we'd walk right up to the front door and knock on the front door, right? In that neighborhood, you stood outside the fence or a ways from the front door and you would yell.
Yep.
And it was a respect. It was a respect thing. It was a respect of people's stuff in area. And so the noise at first really just frightened me because I don't know, we just don't raise our voices much. But
Yeah.
and so that was a respect thing, and then I got used to that, and so we just started yelling over fences too, and it just
Yep.
it's a breakdown of social differences.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing. I loved my time there, and
Yep.
we quickly became kid central.
So I remember probably the first lesson we learned in the house. You started, yeah. Yeah, I'll get back to that in a second. But
Yeah,
I just
we'll
remember we started homeschooling the kids.
Yep.
And I remember George Mueller. You guys started reading these little books on
Missionaries.
Missionaries, yeah. And George Mueller is one of them. And if you don't know George Mueller, he way back like 1700 something, there was in England, there is England, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a disease that wiped out a lot of the adult population. So he had all these orphan kids. And he decided to open an orphanage. But he wasn't going to do it like the way we normally think of it by, going around and asking for donations or going to churches or whatever. He literally took a pen and a paper and he started listing all the needs that he needed to provide for these kids.
And then he prayed for them.
And then he prayed for it. And then when that need was fulfilled, he wrote down the date. And he was so, like, literally the stories where he sat the kids down to eat and there's no food.
Yeah.
And they'd pray for their dinner. And next thing you know, the milkman is knocking on the door, or the bread guy, and they're like, "Oh, my wagon broke down. Can you help?" And they're like, "Yep. Go out there real quick." And then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, here's enough milk and bread for everybody to eat,"
Yeah.
So like, "Oh, well, that's cool. This guy can pray this way. We'll start praying that way." So I remember we didn't have beds for kids yet, and they're all bunking in one bed. So we didn't have any bunk beds. And Emma prayed for white matching bunk beds.
Yes.
We had to drive a ways to get them. It wasn't terribly far away. We had to drive a ways to get them, but we found very affordable matching white bunk beds. And then we needed a second car, and we didn't have very much money. Like $5,000 cash pay for a car. And we're like, started looking around. I was like, that ain't gonna buy us the crappiest of minivans, maybe. And then who knows what's wrong with it. And so that'd have been that next Easter. Maybe it was that Easter. I don't know when that was. Mm-hmm. Your sister came down. It had to have been that next Easter. So about, I don't know when we moved into that house, but she came down with a different car. I was like, "Hey, where's your Ford Flex?" And she's like, "Well, we just got this car. We're not sure what we're going to do with it." We're like, "Well, if you're going to sell it, let us know." Well, I went and looked at the Blue Book value, and it was double what we could afford. I was like, whatever. And so, but then she said, "Well, Jeremy and I next week, or we have a date, we'll sit down and talk about it." Well, they both kind of prayed about it and thought about it, and they both showed up. We never told them our budget, never told them our number. They both sat down at dinner at their favorite Mexican restaurant, probably, and and they both had $5,000 in their head, and they sold it to us for $5,000. Yeah, and that was a huge answered prayer at the time.
Blessing, yeah,
yeah.
Because we were feeling very isolated with Scott being gone, and he needed his truck to travel in, so we were feeling very isolated there.
Yeah, no wheels.
No. So that was such a blessing, and
And so we just kind of started praying that way, and God just kept providing for us. It was pretty crazy. We were really learning how to trust, actually, just learning to trust that God would provide for us. You provide for our needs. So so that was pretty cool. But we did get very. I remember that was there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood, a couple of older kids. I quickly became the bike guy. Like I had the air compressor and I had the tools and I would fix everybody's bikes. And a lot of the kids would come over. I think Brady had some Nerf guns and we had some 6-foot tables. We'd lay the 6-foot tables on their sides. And I think Sam's had the Nerf bullets, like the huge tub for like $10 after, like they're normally like $50. They were $10 after Christmas.
Yeah.
So I got like 2 of those. And I spent many nights picking up
Nerf bullets.
Like,
upon Nerf
Brady's
bullets.
like, they lost all my bullets. I'm like, no, just walk around and find them. They're in the bushes. They're somewhere on the roof, in the gutter. So yeah, I spent that
everywhere.
whole summer, I think, picking up Nerf bullets.
Yeah.
A lot of the girls would come by and they would spend time with our girls and color and draw. And yeah, it just became, I remember very distinctly though, I was kind of a big sports guy. I love football and stuff. And I remember telling Becky that summer, like, I'm giving up sports. This is too much time, too much of a time sink. Just, I spend so much time watching football and stuff, and I'm just going to give it up. Well, right after that, a couple kids in the neighborhood started coming by, and one was kind of special needs. Um, but they were really cool kids, and we'd play football and they would throw catch and talk all the time and talk about sports. And he was a huge Patriots fan. And also, so football season comes around, I was like, yeah, I still kind of was on that path to give up sports, but that's Patrick Mahomes' first season of starting. And that he started the season, I think, with 4 touchdown game and a 6 touchdown game. I'm a big Kansas City fan. Like, I'm a big University of Illinois fan because that's where I went to school and that's where I grew up. But I was never like a Bears fan or a Colts fan. But when we moved to Kansas City, I started going to Chiefs games and Royals games, and that was a lot of fun. We became big Kansas City fans
Yep.
for pro sports. And yeah, we're just kind of giving it up. It's like, yeah, but man, Mahomes just hit the scene on fire. And that was a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I'm still a big Chiefs fan. I've been starting to go to games every year. I was actually at Ground Zero last year where Taylor Swift
Oh goodness.
showed up at the Chiefs Bears game for her first ever NFL game. Literally after the Blackhawks went over for the opening for the anthem or Star Spangled Banner. Uh, there's this big commotion. I turn around, everybody's got their phones up in the air looking behind me. And she was in the suite in my section about 25, 30 rows behind me. It's pretty crazy. So I
She
was,
as in Taylor Swift.
yeah, Taylor Swift, yeah.
Yeah. Let's not
So
get into that.
I just thought it was awkward because, like, the whole game, all the women in front of me are watching her instead of the game. I'm like, can I just watch football without a bunch of women staring back over my shoulder? It was kind of
I
crazy.
think I'm just tired of answering the question of, oh, you must be a Kansas City fans because of Taylor Swift. I'm like, no, we were fans before Taylor
Yes.
Swift. Okay, tangent, but
Yes.
you
Our
were
dog's name's
realizing
Kelsey after Travis Kelsey. So.
true.
Yeah,
That's a
like,
whole nother. Gosh, we have so many stories, Scott.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, back on track. So what he was realizing though through that is that sports is a language. It's a segue. It's a commonality that he could have with these boys who dearly loved football, and that it was just a point of bonding, and it really has. I mean, you did sports ministry in Cuba. We'll get into that, and you've just continued to do that. There's always been
high school
built
football and
So I love how the Lord takes our interest and connects us with other people in that way. So yeah. What else?
So I guess we kind of got settled in there, and I can't think of any other big stories.
We actually did. I didn't know if I would talk about this. Well, I was going to talk about. We actually did get pregnant again during this time. And while we were working on the house, I didn't know it. I started feeling sick, and I'm like, wow, this seems very similar to when I was pregnant. And sure enough, the stick changed whatever it did, and I was pregnant. And so it took me a while to get on board with things. The kids were Anna and Brady were kind of indifferent, but man, Emma, she was on board. She was so excited. And we were about ready to go to our 12-week visit, and then I ended up miscarrying. So that was a really tough part of that time, but I now had this different perspective, right? I think I don't want to be careful how to word this because miscarriage is so hard for everybody. But I was devastated. But then I just kind of relied on my faith. I just absolutely relied on my faith at that time, knowing that God had a plan and that I trusted. I was again still learning to trust in him, and I had to give that to him and just trust in him because there was no explanation. And you know what? Try explaining that to your daughter who's in like I think she was like a freshman at that time.
She's like 12 or 13
probably. Or like 8th grade. Yeah, 8th grade. You know, I mean, That was a really tough time.
I
But we
just
got through it as a family,
I just
and
remember
we
the eye
trusted.
opening part was that was the second most pain I've ever seen you in.
Yeah.
That was how painful it was, how unconcerned the hospital was. They're like
Yeah.
basically just like, oh, yep, you had a miscarriage, on your way. Nothing for it. Just go deal with it. It'll pass. But I just remember
Well,
it was not good. Like it was, I mean, painful emotionally, but just as painful physically too. It was really eye
yeah.
opening, like what women go through that men will never ever experience. But man, that was really tough to know that there's women out there who have done this many multiple times before they even got pregnant the first time, have miscarriages, and the
Yeah.
pain and suffering, and then the emotional part that comes with that was very eye opening. Like
Yeah. And
that.
it's, I just feel like that's, again, another subject that doesn't get talked about, like what that feels like for someone to
Yeah,
go to experience
yeah.
miscarriage. And just physically, the being scared. I remember the hospital. And honestly, I don't want to get into like, but I feel like this needs to be said. At that point, we were on some state aid for my pregnancy. We had Samaritan Ministries as a backup, but we did qualify because we weren't making that much
Mm-hmm.
money at that time. And so we qualified for some state aid.
I forgot about that.
And I was treated, after being on private insurance
Yep.
and experiencing pregnancy under a private insurance, and then experiencing this pregnancy under state aid. I was just rushed in and out of there. They wouldn't even tell me what was happening. They said, well, under state law, we can't even tell you what's happening. And because I would point blank ask, am I miscarrying? And they wouldn't answer me. So I just sat there in pain, struggling on my own. They wouldn't give me anything. I remember as I was being kicked out of that hospital, I actually miscarried in the bathroom and not understanding. And then I had to realize on my own what had just happened. Like it was awful.
I
And
forgot about that.
so I hope this isn't too much detail for people, but I think it's important to know that we were quickly figuring out the differences between privilege and maybe underprivileged. And I don't even know if I'm saying that wrong, right or wrong, but it's definitely, there is a difference. And so
Mm-hmm.
for people who have never experienced anything like this, either financially or whatever, it was eye-opening just to see how most of America lives. Because we've been very blessed our whole lives, and to experience things in a different way, it was just really sad to see that there is a difference in treatment.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. All right,
Yep.
I'm going to get off that subject, but it does really upset me, and just what I had to endure.
And just really reflecting too, because our first three pregnancies we talked about it when we were pregnant, but there are couples that is a contention point in their marriage, like having to go through the emotional roller coaster of trying to get pregnant. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a real thing, and I guess maybe that was actually to help us understand, what people are going through
Mm-hmm.
on some level. I can't relate fully just because
No,
we were able to have kids and immediately we didn't have to worry about the going years of trying or that emotional stress. But it's a real thing in marriage, man. That's I
absolutely.
um yeah, I guess this helps us this understand, empathize a little bit more. I can't fully, like I said, I don't think I can fully, but it helps.
But I think, yeah, God doesn't, sometimes things happen and we don't know why. But I think if we take everything that happens to us and run us through God doesn't want to punish us. God doesn't want us to feel pain, but He does take everything, even the really crappy stuff, and He uses it. If you will allow it, He will use it to help
Yep.
others, so you can speak to that, and you can understand someone else's pain. And that's why, again, this vulnerability, we talk about these things because uh gosh, it's hard if we don't talk about this, and people just have to live alone in what has happened in their experiences. Like, it's such a lonely place.
Yeah.
And so, if we normalize talking about this and walking in community with someone who's going through something hard, like, So again, I talk about the miscarriage because I know so many women who have experienced it who haven't felt safe enough to talk about it. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we're kind of pushing 30 minutes again. So we're still in Florida. So I guess a
Yeah.
couple of things that happened. We went on 2 mission trips with our church.
Mhm.
Our pastor's wife was actually made in Cuba. 9 days before she was born, her parents were brought to America, and so um, she has very perfect Cuban dialect, and but can also speak English very fluently, both very fluently, and so
Yeah.
she actually not only leads our mission trips from our church, but she also does that for
Other groups,
other
yeah.
groups as well, different missionary groups. So we got to experience that twice, and that's eye opening as well. I just remember just the food wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. We never had anything green, no vegetables, very starchy. I just remember, I think one of the biggest things is when we went back to Havana, and as a group, we went to the restaurant right across from the Capitol building, which was 1 foot taller than ours. Uh, and it was a pretty nice restaurant, dim lit, like champagne ice bottle holder things next to the table, cloth napkins, stuff we hadn't seen in a week. Pretty unlimited menu, even had beef on there and shrimp, I think, which was no sign of anything close to that where we were at,
Mm-mm.
about 3 hours west of Havana. And I remember just looking at Becky's like, I can't do this. I can't eat this. I was about to revolt. It's like, I can't just walk away from those people who are just,
I mean, literally, they
yeah,
gave us all that they had for food to make sure that we were fed.
yeah,
Like, food is not readily available there, so that
no.
was that
We had
was
to pay. We had a
huge.
lot of money too,
We
so
we
we were able to
paid
get
them
food
to
because
find
we
it,
had
but they
money.
had to
Yeah,
find it.
yeah. I think we had
Yeah,
eggs one time. Like there's just not eggs, like
yeah,
stuff we take for granted. Uh, so yeah, we were like kind of in revolt, but then we saw the prices and we're like, oh, it was like $4 or $5 for this meal. It wasn't like it was, $60 like at going to Fogo de Chao or something.
yeah.
So yeah, just
Just
it
change our
was very eye
perspective.
opening, and actually as jealous as they are of us, we were equally jealous because while they didn't have much, they had time. They had time freedom. Their jobs weren't demanding. Like I think the best quote of the first trip was it's like we pretend to work and the government pretends to pay us. So it's
Yeah,
so yeah, it's
but they
just
cared for each other
but yeah,
well.
they cared
Like,
for each other. They
it
had
was
time. They
all
hung
about
out. They
family.
were happy. Yeah, family was
Yeah,
important. People, there was no nursing homes. If you were elderly, you stayed with everybody took care of you.
yeah,
It was a very yeah, it was just a very cohesive church family that we got to witness. Where they're jealous with all our stuff, but really to have all our stuff, we had to spend tons of time working for it
working for it.
and
Yeah,
paying for it. And then what do you do your spare time? Take your kids everywhere and go play a million sports, and you have your TV shows you're watching. You just every minute of your days is filled up, where theirs was not. And so
yeah,
yeah, I think there was some jealousy and envy going both ways after visiting there. That's probably the biggest thing.
yeah.
Made some few friends, people who I still message to this
Yeah.
day.
You know what I
Really
was really
good.
grateful for
What?
when we got back?
What?
Toilet paper.
Yeah, toilet paper.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make
I could
light
live
of it,
without it,
but
but women, yeah, women, that's a different
toilet.
story. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. In fact, I remember getting back to the to Tampa. We flew into Tampa and we go to the bathroom. And I just look in there. It's like everything's automatic, everything's powered. There's a plenty. There's bounty though of soap and toilet paper and paper
yeah.
towels. Like they had none of that down there. Like literally
I
none
was
of it.
thinking, like, how would you know how to
Yeah.
wash your hands?
Yeah. Like
If you had never seen that before, like, how would you know how to
where's
use
the
an
faucet handle?
automatic
Oh yeah.
faucet or
Yeah.
soap or air? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was overwhelming. Just the lights, the noises, the sounds, the
Yep.
technology. When we came back, I just remember feeling completely overwhelmed by all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think one last story,
But
maybe.
we got to share the gospel. I
Yeah,
mean,
we
we were
did.
sharing that. It
Yeah,
was really
we
cool.
shared our story. We
Yep.
yeah, we got to. It was really good. Like I really,
Wonderful trip.
in fact,
Beautiful
in
people.
fact, I think the second trip there, we bought everybody's red bracelets, and on the way out in Havana, I found one. I bought me a red bracelet, and I don't know what happened to it. I can't find it, and so I gave blood, and I got $20 Amazon gift card. So I bought this T-shirt, and it got me a red bracelet. It's almost exactly the same as one I got in Havana. And actually, it
It comes
arrives.
today.
It comes today, so I'm excited to start wearing my red bracelet again to remind me of my
Our Cuban family.
our Cuban family. So
Yeah.
I guess one more story. Where was I going to take this? Real quick about so the church we started going to has changed a lot since there's a new pastor. The pastor had been there for like 25 years, and he just left there a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the church has changed a lot. But I know we went down there this last March for spring break, and there's a bunch. Yeah, it's just kind of like some people that left the church because it changed, and they're like started talking about it. I just shut it down. Like, no, this church is exactly the church we needed at that time in our walk with Jesus. And that's exactly what it was. That church was perfect for us. Would I go there again? Probably not. But at that time point in our life, absolutely. Like we learned so much, the Bible studies, the people who poured into us, the kids, it's a kind of an elderly church. The kids had like 1 million grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple other families in the church, but not very many, not like most churches. And and yeah, the pastor was great. We got baptized there in the Gulf.
All 5 of us, baptized in the
Good or
Gulf.
bad, we all got baptized at the same time. So talking more about the kids, but yeah, that's a different story. But the one thing that happened too was I was really feeling called to be a pastor. Mm-hmm. Like that is my path. I am going to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And so the church is willing to support me. The pastor, actually, in New Orleans Baptist Seminary, he got his doctorate from there. He has a PhD. He actually worked for the seminary. He was running the seminary and the prisons, the Florida State prisons. Worked very closely with New Orleans campus because it was a what do you call it when the like you're accredited mm-hmm. school within there. They got degrees, masters in divinity. It was crazy. And so New Orleans had a satellite office in Orlando, 2 hours away. And so I just go there once a month. Church helped pay for it. Went and applied. Since I had a sexual addiction, I had to meet with somebody and talk about that and an interview. They all got lined up. Never heard from the guy. Emailed them. Never heard from him. Next thing I know, never heard from the school, like from the what do you call it, the enrollment office, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, from
admissions.
Yeah, admissions. Never heard from him, and yeah, just went weeks and weeks and weeks. And the pastor who knows a bunch of people, actually works in New Orleans now for the seminary, like knows people, couldn't get an answer. And months went by, and I was supposed to start in August, and never even heard anything. And so,
yeah,
second or third week of July, get a call. I was like, "Oh, we're so sorry, your record got flagged wrong in the database. We'll let you know next week." I'm like, "All right, cool." Well, next Thursday, the week I remember it was on Thursday, they called us and said, "Hey, you're been admitted. You can start classes this August." I'm like, "Cool." But Friday we had immersive discipleship training with a couple we had met through the pregnancy center.
Yeah. So while his application had been tagged, we had met up with these people and had talked, and they'd invited us to the discipleship intensive.
Yep.
And
it was a One Body Church.
Yeah.
Their website's onebody.church, number one. But yeah, so Damien and Cheryl, they invited us to their home, and we just about 20 people there or so. We did it immersive, so all Friday night, all day Saturday, and a half day on Sunday. And when we got done Sunday night, we both looked at each other like, we don't need to go to seminary. Like, we're gonna be effective for God right now. We literally got trained up on so many things that weekend, and
yeah,
it was just amazing. And so we yeah, so the desire for me to be a pastor quickly fell away, and our desire to share the gospel and disciple people just went through the roof.
Yeah.
And so so that's really kind of probably a good ending for stage 1 of Florida, part 2A of 2.
I don't know. We're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys will want to keep listening. And for those of you that don't know, like this word discipleship, it's basically learning about Jesus and just passing along what you're learning as you go. Like you don't have to be some people think we got to be perfect before we can be effective for the Lord, and that's not the case. And we were learning to trust. We were understanding more, and we learned some amazing tools, which we'll get into. I think we should do.
Eventually.
I know we have so many things to talk. We just talks, but yeah. So that's what we had learned, and that's where we're gonna pause for now. And we will do a part 3.
To be.
No, I'll get confused.
To be of 2.
It's just easier to say 3.
All right, part 3 of 3 now.
No, well, don't say that. Let's not make promises we can't keep because it might go to 4.
We'll have to edit this. This is part. Of. There we go.
Insert number. But I think. Thank you for just letting us tell our story because this is fun. I'm enjoying reliving this.
Yeah, I didn't think it was fun. So.
Yeah. Oh, and I get to hang out with you.
Yeah.
The cheese factor. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Thank you for tuning in today. God bless. Part whatever is next. Thank you so much for joining us today. Check back for the next part. 2, 3, I don't know, I lost count. But anyways, join us for the next part of our journey. Please like, share, and subscribe to help our ministry reach those in need. And as always, if you have any questions or just need a little help or just want to talk to someone, please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. God bless. We love you.